In Lesson 3, we're going to talk a little bit more about HTML, moving out of the individual word and phrase elements to what we call flow-level semantics. In this first chapter, we're going to talk about simple flow-level semantics, starting with paragraphs. Paragraphs, as you know, break up content and make it a little bit easier to scan. So if we take a look at a simple paragraph here, cuttlefish have large W-shaped pupils, etc., etc., this is how we create line breaks between this piece of content and other pieces of content on the page. So if we jump over to the browser really quickly, you can see here on the left-hand side that all of the paragraphs of content, even though I've put line breaks between them in the actual content, aren't separated. But once I put P elements around them, then all of a sudden we have these nice line breaks between each of those paragraphs. Paragraphs are probably the simplest of the flow-level semantics. The next simplest are lists. There are a couple of different kinds of lists in HTML, the first two of which make use of the li element for each of their list items. So here we have an example of two list items for two different video downloads, each contained inside of an li element. Now if the order of these list items matters, then we want to mark them up inside of an ol element for ordered list. Here we see an example of that. But if the order doesn't matter, then we want to mark it up inside of a ul element for an unordered list. And this is what that looks like. Now the difference between these two semantically is that one, the order matters, the other, the order doesn't matter. From a visual display standpoint, browsers put numbers in front of ordered list items and bullets in front of unordered list items. Now in the example site I've prepared for you, I'm using list items for the navigation down here at the bottom. You can see the UL followed by a couple LIs. It's all contained inside of a nav element, which we'll discuss a few chapters from now. And if I tweak the CSS just slightly, I can make the bullets appear. Now I've been using style sheets in order to make those bullets not appear because I find them distracting. Now using CSS, I had turned off the bullets, but if I disable the display inline block property on these list items, now all of a sudden you see the bullets appearing next to them. We have another list construct in HTML called description lists that are a little bit different than ordered and unordered lists. A description list is usually used for something like a glossary. So glossaries, as we know, have terms and definitions. So therefore, description lists have terms and definitions. Terms are marked up in the DT element, and the definitions are marked up in a DD element. And then we wrap the whole thing in a DL element, and we get something that looks a little bit like this. Now, description lists can contain a single term and a single definition, or they can contain multiples. So here we see we've got Cuttlebone and chromatophores both defined within the same description list. Now there are instances where you might have multiple definitions for the same term or multiple terms that share a definition, and description lists support this. You can have a DT followed by multiple DDs or vice versa, multiple DTs followed by a DD. Moving on from lists, the next type of flow-level semantic I want to talk to you about are heading levels. Now headings come in 6 flavors from the H1 to the H6 element, and the way that we use these is the H1 is the most important headline on the page and the H6 is the least important headline on the page. Now when we use these elements in our markup, we create a natural document outline. Outlines help us to show how organized our content is, and they're also exposed to assistive technology in order to allow users to more quickly navigate through a document. Here's a quick example of an H1 followed by 2 H2s, and you'll notice in the outline at the bottom that Cuttlefish Physiology is the overarching headline, and Cuttlebone and Skin are nested underneath it. That's how the outlining algorithm works. If you're interested in seeing the outlining algorithm, you can use the Web Developer Toolbar, which is an extension for Chrome and Firefox. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of the browser here, there's a little cog, and when I click on that, it's going to show a little overlay, and I can go to the Information tab and click on View Document Outline. And that allows me to see how well organized my page is. Looks pretty good to me. Now there are instances where you may not need a heading when you're switching from one bit of content to another. And this is where the HR element comes in. Traditionally, the HR had been for a horizontal rule, but it's been recast in HTML5 as a paragraph level thematic break. Now what that means is that you're shifting the subject or the location, such as talking about Bob and Julie in Johnson City and then switching to talking about Regina and Pete in Fort Lauderdale. It may not make sense to have a separate heading here, so an HR would be perfectly acceptable. And that brings us to the end of this chapter. We talked about paragraphs, we've discussed different types of lists such as ordered and unordered lists, as well as description lists. We've discussed headings, and we've discussed thematic breaks. In the next chapter, we'll tuck into tables. I'll see you in a few minutes.